He locked that office every Saturday night. And no matter how much I begged, he never let me in. For years, I thought it was just work, until the day he died. That night, I took his key, opened the door, and what I saw inside froze my heart forever. I still remember that cold evening like it happened yesterday. The rain was falling softly, and thunder grumbled in the distance. I stood in front of my late husband's office door, holding the small silver key I had just found inside his Bible. My hands were shaking as I slid the key into the lock. For more than 30 years, that door had remained closed every Saturday night. No one dared to enter. Click. The door opened with a long, creaking sound that echoed through the house. A strange smell filled my nose, something between old paper and perfume. The room was dim, only lit by the soft light from the window. I took a deep breath and stepped in. At first, everything looked normal. His books, his files, his old typewriter. But then I saw it. A small wooden box placed right in the middle of his desk, with my name written on it in his handwriting. I opened the box slowly, and what I saw inside made my whole body freeze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Right there, inside that box, lay something I never thought my husband was capable of hiding. But let me start from the beginning, so you can understand how it all began. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 72 years old, a widow, and for most of my life, I thought I knew my husband, Pastor Edward Thompson, better than anyone else. We were married for 50 years. We raised 2 children together, built our home from nothing, and lived a quiet life in the little town of Greenwood. Edward was a calm man, too calm sometimes. He was a church pastor, respected by everyone in town. People came to him for advice, prayers, and help. But there was one thing about him that no one could explain. Every Saturday night, without fail, he locked himself inside his office. He would go in there after dinner, and wouldn't come out until Sunday morning. I used to think he was just preparing his sermon for church, so I never questioned it. But as the years went by, my curiosity grew. Sometimes I would walk past his office late at night and hear strange sounds, whispering, sometimes crying, sometimes even soft singing. When I asked him about it, he would just smile and say, "Some things are better left between me and God." At first, I trusted him completely. But as time passed, little things started to bother me. He became distant. He would avoid eye contact. He'd hold my hand during prayer, but his mind seemed far away. I tried to tell myself it was just stress. Pastors carried the weight of many people's problems. One Saturday night, I remember knocking on his door because I heard something fall inside. There was silence for a moment. Then his voice came, calm but firm. "Margaret, please. Don't come in." The tone in his voice made my heart stop. He had never spoken to me like that before. I walked away quietly, pretending I wasn't hurt. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "What is he hiding from you?" Years passed, and our children grew up and moved away. Edward and I grew old together, sitting on our porch every evening, talking about the past. But every Saturday night, he would still disappear into that same office. Even when his hands began to shake with age, even when his legs hurt from arthritis, that habit never changed. Then one Sunday morning, he didn't come out. I called his name again and again. When I finally opened the door, I found him slumped over his desk, his Bible open in front of him, and a peaceful smile on his face. He had passed away quietly in his sleep. I cried for days. He had been my world. After the funeral, the house felt too big, too quiet. I would wake up and reach for him in bed, only to find the cold side of the sheets. For weeks, I couldn't bring myself to enter his office. It felt sacred, like stepping into a part of him that still lingered. But one afternoon, while cleaning his things, I found that small silver key tucked between the pages of his Bible. My heart skipped a beat. The key had a small label on it, "Office Drawer." That night, I sat in front of the locked door, the key trembling in my fingers. The thought of opening it filled me with both fear and excitement. I whispered a small prayer and turned the key. Inside, everything looked the same as he had left it. His chair, his pen, his Bible on the desk. I sat down in his chair and let my hand touch the surface of his desk. It felt cold, almost lifeless. That's when I noticed the small wooden box. It wasn't there before. It was neatly placed on top of his papers, my name written on the lid. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. Inside, there were several old photographs. My hands shook as I picked up the first one. It was a picture of Edward, but not with me. He was standing beside another woman, holding a baby. I frowned. The woman looked familiar. Very familiar. When I looked closer, my heart nearly stopped. The woman was my younger sister, Sarah. And the baby had Edward's eyes. I dropped the photograph, and my whole body went numb. I felt like the ground had disappeared under my feet. I looked through the box. There were letters, love notes, and a birth certificate with Edward's name written under father. He had a secret child. With my own sister. Tears blurred my vision. My heart raced so fast I thought I would faint. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My husband, the man I prayed with, loved, and grew old beside, had betrayed me in a way I could never have imagined. I sat there for what felt like hours, crying silently, clutching the photo in my trembling hands. Every word of love he had ever spoken to me now felt like a lie. How could he do this? How could my own sister betray me too? But then I noticed something else inside the box, a sealed envelope, written in his shaky handwriting. For Margaret. To be opened only after my death. I stared at it for a long moment. My heart pounded. My hands shook as I reached for it. Just as I was about to open the letter, I heard a sound, a soft knock on the door. My whole body stiffened. Who could that be at this hour? I slowly turned toward the door, clutching the envelope close to my chest, as the knocking came again, louder this time. That was when I heard a familiar voice from the other side. "Grandma, it's me." I froze again. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, one that sounded hauntingly familiar, almost too familiar. My heart began to race, and the letter slipped from my trembling hand. "Grandma, it's me." The voice on the other side of the door made my heart stop. It was soft, trembling, and it sounded so much like him. For a moment, I couldn't move. My body froze the same way it had when I opened that box. I whispered, "Who's there?" There was silence. Then the voice came again, a little louder this time. "It's Daniel. Grandma, please open the door." Daniel. That name hit me like thunder. My grandson, the one I hadn't seen in almost 15 years. The child of my sister Sarah. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The last time I saw him, he was just a boy, maybe 10 years old. Sarah had come to visit me one afternoon, crying and begging for forgiveness. She said she couldn't live with the secret anymore. That was the day I found out the boy she called her son from another man was actually my husband's child. I had thrown them both out of my house that day. I was angry, broken, and too ashamed to face anyone in town. I told myself I'd never see them again. And now here he was at my door. I stood still for a moment, then slowly walked toward the door. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. When I opened the door, the sight before me nearly took my breath away. There he stood, grown tall, and wearing a black jacket soaked by the rain. His face looked so much like Edward's that it made my knees weak. "Daniel," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "It's been a long time, Grandma." Tears filled my eyes before I could speak. I wanted to close the door and run away. But something inside me, maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, made me step aside. "Come in," I said softly. He walked in, dripping rainwater on the floor. The smell of wet clothes filled the air. I noticed a small scar on his chin just like Edward's. My heart ached as I watched him look around the house like he was searching for memories he never had. "I heard about Grandpa's death," he said quietly, his eyes resting on the old photo of Edward on the wall. "I'm sorry." I swallowed hard. "How did you know?" "Mom told me before she passed," he replied. His voice cracked. "She told me everything." I froze again. "Sarah is dead?" I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded slowly. 3 months ago. Cancer. For a moment, I felt something twist inside me, sadness mixed with anger. Sarah was gone. The sister who had betrayed me, lied to me, stolen the one man I trusted most. She was gone forever. "I'm sorry, Grandma," Daniel continued, his voice breaking. "Mom said I should find you after she died. She said there's something I need to give you, something Grandpa left behind." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the handwriting on it. It was the same shaky writing from the letter I had just found inside the office. I gasped. "Where did you get that?" "She gave it to me," he said softly. "She said Grandpa asked her to keep it safe. He told her it was meant for you and me." I stared at the envelope in shock. My hands trembled as I took it from him. 2 envelopes. 2 messages. Both from Edward. Something wasn't right. "Sit down," I said, my voice shaking. "There's something I need to show you too." We sat in the office, the same room I had sworn I'd never enter again. The rain outside grew heavier, and the thunder rolled like drums. Daniel looked around with curious eyes. "This was his office?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. "Every Saturday night he locked himself in here. I never knew why until tonight." I showed him the box. The photos. The letters. The birth certificate. He stared at them in silence, his face pale. After a long pause he said, "So it's true, he was my father." I nodded slowly, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, Daniel. He was. But I never knew, not until I opened that box tonight." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "Mom told me he loved you both. That he didn't want to hurt you. She said he made a mistake. One he spent his whole life trying to hide." I felt my heart twist. A mistake? Is that what she called it? He didn't answer. For a few moments, the only sound in the room was the rain beating against the window. Then I remembered the other envelope, the one I dropped when he knocked. I picked it up from the floor. "I think it's time we open them," I said quietly. He nodded. My hands shook as I tore open the first letter. The one from Edward that was inside the box. The paper was old and yellow, the ink faded, but the words were clear. "My dear Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I know you have found the truth I hid for so long. I can never ask for your forgiveness, but please, understand. I was a weak man. What happened between Sarah and me was a sin I've carried all my life. Daniel was born innocent, and I wanted to care for him, but I couldn't destroy you to do it. So I helped them in secret. Every Saturday night, I came here to pray for forgiveness, for you, for Sarah, and for myself. Please don't hate him, Margaret. He is your blood too. Love him as your own. That will be my only peace in death. Edward." Tears fell from my eyes, splashing on the letter. My heart ached with confusion, pain, and something I couldn't name, pity maybe. Daniel sat quietly, his eyes wet. "Grandpa really prayed for you every week," he said softly. "He told Mom that he wished he could tell you the truth, but was too afraid to lose you." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I wanted to scream, to ask why he didn't just trust me, but the anger slowly melted into sadness. Then I looked at the second envelope, the one Daniel had brought. "Should I open it?" I asked. He nodded. Inside was another letter, shorter this time. "To Margaret and Daniel. If you both ever find each other after my death, know that it was meant to be. There is one last thing you must do together. Go to the old church in Greenwood, the one where I first preached. Behind the altar, there is a small wooden chest buried under the floor. Inside it, you will find the truth I never had the courage to speak. Forgive me, both of you. Edward." I stared at the letter, my mind spinning. The old church. The place where Edward started his life as a pastor. The same church that had been closed for years after the fire. What truth could still be there? I whispered. Daniel looked up at me, his expression serious. "I think we need to find out." I hesitated. I was tired. My heart had already suffered enough for one night. But something inside me whispered that this wasn't the end. That maybe Edward had one last secret waiting for us. "Tomorrow," I said finally. "We'll go tomorrow morning." Daniel nodded. "I'll stay here tonight. It's too late to go anywhere now." I agreed and led him to the guest room. But as I lay in bed later that night, sleep refused to come. My mind kept going back to Edward's words. Behind the altar. The truth I never had the courage to speak. What could he possibly mean? I turned to the window. The rain had stopped. The moonlight spilled across the yard, quiet and still. I thought I saw a shadow move near the garden, but when I blinked, it was gone. Maybe it was just my imagination. But deep in my chest, a strange feeling began to grow. A whisper that something far darker was waiting for me at that old church. And when the clock struck midnight, I heard it again, 3 slow knocks, this time not from the front door, but from inside my husband's locked office. The first knock came softly, so soft that I thought it was just the wind. But then came the second one, clearer, sharper. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up in bed, my heart racing fast. I turned toward the dark hallway. The whole house was silent except for the slow ticking of the old wall clock. It was coming from my husband's office. I froze, staring into the darkness. My husband's office door had been closed since Daniel, and I left it earlier that night. And I was sure I locked it myself. For a moment, I told myself I was just imagining things. Maybe the sound came from outside. But then I heard something that made my blood turn cold. A faint whisper from inside the room. "Margaret." It was my husband's voice. I gasped and covered my mouth. "No," I whispered to myself. "This can't be happening." The voice came again, a bit clearer this time. "Margaret, don't go to the church." I froze completely. My hands trembled as I reached for the lamp. The moment I turned it on, the light flickered once, twice, then went out. The house went dark again. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so loudly it filled my ears. I could still hear the whisper. Faint, broken, but there. "Margaret." I grabbed my shawl and tiptoed out of the room. Every step creaked under my feet. The hallway seemed longer than ever. I reached the office door, my hand shaking on the handle. Then slowly I turned it. The door opened with a long creak. The room was dark, the air thick and heavy. The moonlight from the window faintly lit the old desk, the box, and the scattered papers. Everything looked still, untouched. "Edward," I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer. I stepped closer. "Edward, is that you?" Still nothing. Only silence. And then, a sudden gust of wind blew through the window, slamming it open. The papers on the desk flew into the air like white birds. I screamed and covered my face. When I lowered my hands, one paper had landed right at my feet. I bent down and picked it up. It was a church record, old and yellow, with my husband's handwriting at the bottom. But when I looked closely, my breath caught in my throat. It was a marriage certificate. "Not ours," it said. "Edward Thompson." And "Sarah Bennett." My sister's name. The room spun. My legs gave way, and I fell to my knees. My husband had married my sister. Secretly. "No, no," I whispered, clutching the paper in disbelief. Tears ran down my cheeks as I stared at that piece of paper that changed everything I thought I knew. Suddenly, the office door slammed shut behind me. I screamed and spun around, but no one was there. The sound echoed through the house. I ran to the door, pulling the handle, but it wouldn't open. My heart pounded faster. I pushed and pulled, but it felt like something was holding it from the other side. Then I heard it again, the whisper. "Margaret." I turned back slowly. In the corner of the room, where the moonlight didn't reach, stood a faint shadow, the outline of a man. My breath caught. My husband's hat hung on that very spot for years, but now it was gone. The shadow moved closer. "Don't go to the church." I stumbled backward, trembling. "Edward, why? What are you hiding from me?" The voice faded. The shadow vanished. The door suddenly swung open. I ran out, gasping for air, and slammed the door behind me. I leaned against the wall, shaking from head to toe. My nightgown was soaked in sweat. Just then, Daniel's door opened. He stepped out, eyes half open, holding a flashlight. "Grandma? What's wrong?" I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. "Something's in that room," I whispered. "Your grandfather's voice." I heard it. He frowned. "It's okay, Grandma. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe it was just a dream." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the paper in my trembling hand told me it wasn't a dream. "Daniel," I said, showing him the old certificate, "your grandfather married my sister." He looked at it, eyes widening. "That's impossible. That would mean..." I interrupted, my voice breaking. "He wasn't just hiding you. He was living 2 lives." Daniel looked speechless. He stared at the floor, silent for a long moment. Then he said softly, "Grandpa wasn't a bad man, Grandma. Maybe there's something else we don't understand yet. I wanted to shout at him, to tell him there was nothing left to understand. But deep inside, something told me he might be right. Edward had left us one last clue. The chest buried under the old church. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Edward's face, smiling that same gentle smile he always had. But now behind that smile, I saw secrets, lies, and guilt. When morning finally came, Daniel made breakfast, though neither of us could eat much. The house felt heavy, filled with unspoken fear. "Are you sure you want to go?" he asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "If Edward left something there, I need to see it. I need to know everything." We packed a small bag and drove to the old church. The road was bumpy, covered with weeds and fallen branches. The place had been abandoned since the fire 20 years ago. The windows were broken, the walls blackened by smoke, and the big wooden cross at the front hung crookedly. As we stepped inside, the air smelled of ashes and old wood. Dust floated through the sunlight coming from a cracked window. I looked around slowly. He said, "It's buried behind the altar." Daniel walked ahead, moving broken pieces of wood aside. "Here," he said, pointing to the floor behind the altar. "There's something here." We both knelt down and started digging with our hands. The wood was soft from rot. After a few minutes, Daniel's fingers hit something hard. "It's a box," he said, pulling it out carefully. It was a small wooden chest, dark and old, with a rusty lock on it. My heart pounded as I stared at it. "Do we open it here?" Daniel asked. I nodded. "Yes. Whatever is inside, we need to know." He found a rock and broke the lock. The chest creaked open slowly. Inside there were several envelopes, a small Bible, and a leather notebook. I picked up the notebook and flipped through the pages. My hands trembled as I read the first few lines. "I have sinned before God and my wife. I am living a lie that I cannot escape. Sarah is not just Margaret's sister. She is also." The next line was burned away. I turned the page, my hands shaking more. The next entry read, "If the truth ever comes out, everything will be destroyed. The child must never know the truth about his real mother." I frowned, confused. What does that mean? His real mother? Daniel leaned closer, his face pale. "What is he talking about, Grandma?" Before I could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty church. We both froze. The footsteps were slow, heavy, coming from the back of the church. Daniel grabbed my hand. "Grandma, someone's here." We turned toward the dark doorway. The shadow of a tall figure appeared against the sunlight. A voice, deep and calm, spoke from the darkness. "I see you've found what was never meant to be found." The voice sent shivers down my spine. Daniel and I froze where we stood, the old wooden chest still open in front of us. Dust swirled in the sunlight as the footsteps grew louder. "I asked you a question," the voice said again. "Why are you here?" Daniel stepped in front of me protectively, gripping the flashlight tightly. "Who are you?" he demanded. The tall figure stepped forward slowly until the light hit his face, an old man maybe in his late 60s, with deep wrinkles and tired eyes. He was wearing a dark coat, and a small silver cross hung from his neck. When I saw his face clearly, my heart skipped a beat. "Father Gregory?" I gasped. He stopped. His expression softened slightly. "Margaret?" Daniel looked confused. "You know him?" "Yes," I whispered. "He was your grandfather's friend, the priest who helped him start this church." Father Gregory nodded slowly. "And I warned him this day would come." He walked closer, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. "You shouldn't have opened that chest, Margaret." I stared at him, trembling. "He wanted me to find it. Edward told us in his letter." The priest shook his head. "No. He only meant for you to know part of it. The rest would destroy everything you believe about him." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Father Gregory sighed, and sat on a broken bench. He looked old, much older than I remembered. His hands shook slightly as he rubbed the silver cross around his neck. "I promised Edward I'd keep his secret if he confessed it before God," he said softly. "And he did. But now that he's gone, it seems the truth refuses to stay buried." Daniel looked restless. "Father, please, what truth? My mother is dead. My grandfather is dead. We deserve to know everything. The priest looked at him sadly. Your mother? He paused. Son, I'm afraid Sarah was not your mother. The words hit us like a storm. What? Daniel said, his voice trembling. Father Gregory nodded slowly. Sarah raised you as her own, yes. But she was not the one who gave birth to you. I felt dizzy. That can't be true. Sarah told me she had the child after my husband's mistake. The priest looked down at his hands. Sarah wasn't the one who carried the child. It was you, Margaret. My knees went weak. I stared at him in shock. What did you just say? He sighed deeply. Edward came to me many years ago, broken, scared. You were ill at the time, remember? The doctors said you couldn't have children anymore. Edward wanted a child so badly that he and Sarah made a terrible choice. They agreed to use your egg and his seed through a secret medical arrangement. Sarah carried the baby for both of you. I blinked, unable to speak. My heart pounded in my ears. Father Gregory continued softly. You gave birth to Daniel, Margaret. You just never knew. You were in the hospital, weak and sick, while Edward told you the baby had died. He gave the newborn to Sarah to raise. That's why Sarah left Greenwood for so many years, to hide the truth. Tears blurred my vision. No, that's not possible. Daniel's eyes were wide with disbelief. Though, Grandma is my real mother? The priest nodded slowly. Yes. By blood and by soul. I covered my mouth, my body trembling. The pain, the confusion, the years of anger, all came crashing down at once. I had hated my own sister for something she never explained. And my husband, the man who prayed every Saturday night, had spent his life begging God to forgive the lie that built our family. Father Gregory stood up and placed his hand gently on my shoulder. He didn't want to hurt you, Margaret. He thought he was protecting you. Every Saturday night, he came here to this church to pray, for you, for Sarah, and for Daniel. He begged God to forgive him for the secret that saved one life, but destroyed another. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I cried so hard my body shook. Daniel knelt beside me, tears in his eyes too. For the first time, I looked at him not as the son of betrayal, but as the child I never got to hold. I reached out, cupping his face. My boy. I whispered. All these years. He held me tightly, crying into my shoulder. Grandma, no, Mom. I'm so sorry you didn't know. The priest looked away, wiping his eyes. There's more, he said quietly. I looked up at him, still holding Daniel's hand. More. He nodded. Edward didn't just come here to pray. He came here to hide something else, something connected to the fire that destroyed this church. My heart skipped. The fire? Father Gregory's eyes darkened. The fire wasn't an accident. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The priest sighed. Someone wanted the secret buried forever. The night before the fire, Edward came to me frightened. He said someone had found out the truth and was threatening to expose it. The next morning, the church burned down. We never found who did it, but Edward believed it was Sarah. I felt my stomach twist. Sarah? He nodded. She didn't want the truth to come out. She was terrified of losing Daniel. Edward tried to protect both of you. He told her he would keep the secret if she stayed away. I covered my face with my hands. Oh God! The priest looked toward the window, where sunlight filtered through broken glass. Edward never forgave himself. He rebuilt his life on prayer and silence, waiting for the day when you would find the truth yourself. For a while none of us spoke. The only sound was the wind whistling through the empty church. Then Daniel said quietly, so the fire, the lies, all of it was to protect me. Yes, Father Gregory said softly. And now perhaps, it's time to let the truth rest. I took a deep breath and wiped my tears. Father, thank you for telling us. But I need to know one more thing. Why did Edward write that message? Don't go to the church? Why try to stop us? The priest hesitated, his eyes suddenly filled with something dark, fear. Because, he said in a low voice, he wasn't the only one keeping secrets here. There's something, or someone still watching this place. Edward told me before he died that if anyone ever came back here, something terrible would happen. The wind howled through the broken window, slamming the church doors shut with a loud bang. Daniel jumped to his feet. What was that? The priest turned pale. We need to go. Now. I grabbed the chest, clutching it tightly against my chest. What's happening? The priest didn't answer. He only whispered, it's too late. We turned toward the door, but a dark shadow moved across the church floor, tall, fast, and silent. The air grew cold. Then, from the back of the church, a voice spoke, not Edward's this time, but one that sent chills down my bones. You should have left the past buried. The voice echoed through the church, low and cold. Daniel swung his flashlight toward the sound, but there was no one there, just the shifting shadows across the cracked walls. Who's there? He shouted, his voice trembling. The priest gripped his cross tightly. Stay behind me, he warned. This place carries the weight of too many sins. I clutched the old chest tighter, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Father, what's happening? Before he could answer, a gust of icy wind blew through the church. Candles that had long been melted flickered to life for just a second, glowing with an eerie blue light. Then from behind the altar, a figure stepped forward. It was Sarah. Or at least, it looked like her, pale, ghostly, and wearing the same scarf she'd been buried in 20 years ago. Margaret. Her voice came out like a whisper from the grave. You shouldn't have come here. I froze, my body numb. Sarah? Is that really you? The priest muttered a prayer, backing away slowly. Dear Lord. The figure looked at me with eyes full of sorrow. I didn't want you to know. I didn't mean for it to end like this. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom, that's impossible. Aunt Sarah's dead. But I could feel it. The same perfume, the same trembling voice. What happened, Sarah? I whispered. Her ghostly eyes shimmered with tears. The night the church burned, Edward told me he was going to confess everything. I couldn't let him. I thought if he told the truth, you would hate me forever, and Daniel would be taken away. She looked down, her transparent hands trembling. So I came here. I tried to destroy the documents in the chest. But Edward caught me. We fought, and the lantern fell. The fire spread too fast. My voice cracked. You started the fire? She nodded slowly. I didn't mean to kill him, Margaret. I only wanted to stop the truth. Daniel's voice broke. So all this time, the fire that killed Grandpa, it wasn't an accident. The spirit looked at him with sorrow. I loved you like my own son, Daniel. Every lie I told, every tear I shed, it was all for you. Tears streamed down my face. And you made me live in pain for decades, thinking you betrayed me for nothing. I know, her ghost whispered, her voice shaking. And I have paid for it every day since. But you must destroy that chest. What's inside is cursed by the guilt of every lie we lived. The priest stepped forward, holding his cross high. Margaret, listen to her. Let the past rest. Free them all. I looked down at the chest, the letters, the photographs, the truth that had burned our family from within. Daniel touched my hand. Mom, maybe it's time. I took a deep breath, my tears falling onto the old wood. Edward, Sarah, may your souls finally rest. I opened the chest one last time, took out the bundle of letters, and carried them to the altar. There, beside the ashes of the old church, I lit them on fire. The flames rose bright and warm, not blue this time but golden. As the papers burned, Sarah's ghost smiled faintly. Thank you, Margaret. Now I can go home. Her image faded with the last flicker of light, and the church fell silent. Father Gregory made the sign of the cross. It's over, he said softly. But I knew it wasn't just over, it was set free. As the morning sun began to rise through the broken windows, Daniel and I stepped outside. The church looked peaceful for the first time in decades. He turned to me, his voice gentle. So, all this time you were my mother. I smiled through my tears and placed my hand on his cheek. I may not have raised you, but I carried you under my heart. That's a bond no lie can ever destroy. He hugged me tightly, and in that moment, the pain of years seemed to melt away. We walked down the hill together, leaving the ruined church behind, but carrying something new with us. Forgiveness. As we reached the road, I looked back one last time. The sunlight hit the old cross on the roof, and for a second, I could almost see Edward and Sarah standing together, smiling, finally at peace. I whispered, "Rest now, all of you." Then I turned away, holding my son's hand, and walk toward a new beginning. Sometimes, the people we love hide the deepest secrets, not because they don't love us, but because they fear losing us. If this story touched your heart, drop a broken heart in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more grandma stories that remind us. Every secret has a lesson, and every tear has a reason.